thing for sure. Every person who votes for this Republican measure is voting to hurt his or her own constituents, because we all represent people who at some time need help. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The gentleman from Oklahoma.
Continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield to the gentlewoman from Wisconsin, Ms. Moore, 1 minute.
The gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for one.
I'd like to ask the Speaker if I might extend my remarks.
Yeah. The gentlelady will suspend for a moment. The Chair will remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings or other audible conversation is in violation of the rules of the House. The gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Nutrition Reform Work Opportunity Act of 2013 is rife with fraud, waste, and abuse. This bill is fraudulent in its claims that it's a benevolent bill that merely institutes work requirements and won't hurt children. In my very own state of Wisconsin, 4,000 children will lose free and reduced lunch, and as the entire family will be able to be penalized, it will also hurt the elderly and disabled who live in these households. It's fraudulent. It's a bill that's a waste of our constituents' belief and stewardship in us, that we would do the conscientious right thing for the American people. We just don't throw people under the bus when they're in a recession and they can't find employment. It's a waste. And it is abusive of 15% of Americans and 22% of children who live in abject poverty. I ask my colleagues to reject this bill rife with fraud, waste, and abuse. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma continue reserved. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield to the gentlewoman from Arizona, Ms. Sinema, 1 minute.
The gentlelady from Arizona is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for yielding. In Arizona, 1 in 4 children live in food insecurity, unsure of when they'll eat next or where they'll find food. Cuts to SNAP will make this already grave situation even worse. When I was a kid, my family went through tough times, and after my parents got divorced, my mom relied on food stamps to feed us kids. Later, when my stepfather was out of work and my family was homeless, food stamps once again helped my family survive. Yet my family was lucky. We had friends and family and my parents' church helping us, in addition to SNAP. Today, SNAP provides hardworking families with food security while they're struggling to make ends meet. The program helped me, just as SNAP is helping kids and working families in Arizona today. Both family farmers and hungry children in Arizona are waiting on Congress to pass a complete farm bill. I've called on Congress to put hardworking farmers and families ahead of partisanship. Congress should pass a bipartisan farm bill just as it has for decades in the past. Today's bill, unfortunately, isn't a solution for families or farmers. Thank you. I yield back.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma continues to reserve. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Rangel, 1 minute.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
I'd like unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Chair Lady Fudge, for giving me this opportunity. I was sitting in the back and I heard one of the Republicans say that what Moses would want, he was talking about some picture, and I just came up to say that I just talked with Moses and he's not in support of this legislation. As a matter of fact, he referred me to other biblical things about how do we treat the lesser of our brothers and sisters. And he directed my attention to the disparity between the rich that we have in this country and the very, very poor. And I got the impressions after reviewing Matthews that if we're going to refer to Moses, you can't ignore Jesus, who had some concern about the rich people that did not treat his brothers and sisters fairly. And I don't know how it ends, but it seems as though they were trying to get into heaven. He told them to go to hell. But I don't know how it spins out, but everything that seems to be happening in this House strikes against us helping the kids and the vulnerable and helping the sick and the aged. So I would suggest that if we have to go to the Bible, everything we're trying to do to hurt the poor is not going to count for us when we need God the most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Thank
Gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Can I ask you how much time we have?
The gentlelady from Ohio has 4 3/4 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentlewoman from Maryland, Ms. Edwards. 1 minute.
Gentlelady from Maryland is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady, and Mr. Speaker, it's really hard to know what to say anymore. It's impossible for us to rationalize what has become completely irrational. But I'm just going to say what it is. From the other side, this bill is mean, it's unconscionable, and it's really just plain wrong. The rational person would ask, don't they know that nearly 4 million people would have benefits cut and would lose their benefits entirely? A rational person would ask, don't they know that millions of people, beneficiaries, already work, that they go to school, and that they're looking for work? I know what it's like to try to feed and to struggle to feed a child, to wonder whether there's food tomorrow or the next week. Don't they know that this is what families across America are struggling with right now? I don't know. I tell you what, I see the plan: shut down government, starve children, the elderly, the disabled, demonize the poor, blame them for everything. But I'm going to just tell you, when I go to sleep at night, I sleep well. After you cast this vote, after Republicans cast this vote today, they won't sleep well.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma continues to reserve. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver.
The gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Speaker. I have only 1 minute, and I would imagine that 1 minute is sufficient to say that I would plead with my colleagues to pay attention to the facts. The U.S. economy has not healed. We're still struggling with $7.25 an hour minimum wage. And if you make $7.25 working all day, every day, you're going to make slightly over $15,000 a year. You get approximately $4.50 a day to eat on. $4.50. I think that there is a right thing that we all can do. We ought to join forces to do the right thing. And the right thing is not to approve this bill, to back away from it. I mean, we are a rich nation that really is having economic problems. We can deal with our poor. Everybody in this country ought to have equal access to food. Thank you, Mr.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Thank you.
The gentleman from Oklahoma continues to reserve. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding to me. And, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say to my colleagues that this is a sad day, because the whole effort to end hunger used to be a bipartisan issue. I would say to my Republican colleagues that remember Bob Dole and Bill Emerson. Your party has a great tradition, a proud tradition, of being part of the effort to end hunger, working with Democrats. Don't blow that up today. What you are doing here is wrong. And I'm urging my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please do not do this. This is wrong. This is about how we treat the most vulnerable in our society. And I have to just say to all my colleagues here, we should be having a bigger discussion about how to end hunger. And instead, what we're doing here today is moving in a direction where we are going to make hunger worse in this country. You're going to throw 170,000 veterans who are unemployed off of this program. 3.8 million people will be thrown off this program. Surely that is not what you want. But that is what your bill does. That is what the bill that never went through the Agriculture Committee, that was forced upon this House by the Majority Leader, brought to the floor under a closed rule does. Please rethink this. I know that you're better than this.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma continues to reserve. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Yes, I'd like to recognize the gentlelady from Texas for unanimous consent.
Gentlelady is recognized for unanimous consent.
I ask the Speaker, ask unanimous consent to rise to oppose this legislation and place a statement in the record, because those who get food stamps are not criminals, they're just hungry. Thank you. I yield back.
Without objection, the statement will appear in the record. Gentlelady from Ohio.
Is the gentleman ready to close?
Prepared to close after
As well
the
am
lady.
The gentlelady from Ohio has 1 3/4 minutes remaining. Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank my colleague, my chairman, Mr. Lucas, for all of his work on the Farm Bill. I want to ask, though, why did we play this charade on the American people today? Why would we use hunger and poverty as a political football, a game, a kind of sport? This is the people's house. So let's do what is best for the American people. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that the time is always right to do what is right. And to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I know there's been a lot of arm twisting to get you to support this bill. But fortunately, I have many friends on that side of the aisle. And my friends are known to be people who are compassionate, caring patriots. And I implore you to do what is right. Hopefully, you will all muster the courage to vote your conscience. Do what is morally right. Because if you do it, the others who may not have as much courage as you will follow. You will set them free to do what is right. It is time to stand up for the American people. Vote no on this bill.
Yields back her time. The gentlelady yields back her time.
Yes, I yield back.
Her gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 5 1/2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My dear colleagues, on several occasions it's been alluded to the process that we have gone through now literally for years to try and craft a comprehensive farm bill. I think most of you know that I would have preferred this have been accomplished a year ago. I was proud of the committee work at the time, done in a bipartisan way. I was proud when, even though we had to start over in a new session of Congress, the bipartisan effort done in the committee this time. Not every Republican or every Democrat on the committee voted for it, but we had a majority of both sides. Something that seems to be kind of difficult these days on a lot of issues. But that bill came to the floor, and even after a number of amendments were adopted by a majority of this body, primarily focused on the nutrition title, a majority of the body chose not to pursue that bill, not to allow it to move on. And we were compelled to bring what I affectionately refer to as a farm bill only, to the floor, one without the critical title dealing with nutrition. Successful in passing that. But as was noted by many of my colleagues on this side of the room, that left a critical piece out, the nutrition title. And that's the product that we're addressing today. It incorporates all of the efforts, I'll repeat again, from the committee work, dealing with categorical eligibility and LIHEAP and advertising and all of those things. The language we deal with today incorporates the amendments adopted by this body in the effort to address the committee bill. Empowering states through a pilot program to engage able-bodied individuals in TANF-type work. Ending eligibility for SNAP for convicted murderers and pedophiles and rapists. Not their children, not their spouses, but they themselves. Language allowing the states to very clearly use drug testing as a part of their SNAP application process. Adopted by a majority of the vote on this floor, those items. And now it includes language that came out of the Leaders Working Group, things that deal with what we refer to as able-bodied adults without dependents, ABODs. That first committee draft, a reform to the tune of about $20 billion. Many of the things on the floor would have added to that, perhaps not substantially. And in the working group's language, an additional $20 billion in reform. Now that presents us with the bill that we're looking at today. Virtually everybody's ideas in reform rolled into one. A substantial amount of savings in a single bill through reform. I would say this to all my colleagues. You're going to vote your conscience today. You understand the bill, each and every one of you. You understand, I think, from your perspective, the policy implications. I happen to believe that the items in this bill are of sufficient merit to be discussed in a conference committee. Potentially, if the conference would agree to incorporate them in a final conference committee report. But that discussion cannot take place if this bill is not passed. Remember, if this bill is not passed and we go to conference, there are no instructions for reform from the House in effect. And what was one of the fundamental points that I and my colleagues in the Ag Committee discussed as we started this process a long time ago? There would be reforms in all parts of the next Farm Bill. Commodity title, conservation title, nutrition title. There would be the implementation of changes based on our experiences and our learning from the last Farm Bill and series of Farm Bills. I know you're going to vote your conscience, but I ask you, let me go to conference with the Senate with the maximum number of options to work through. Because ultimately, whatever comes out of that conference has to be a comprehensive farm bill. It has to address our ability to raise the food and fiber. It has safety net. It has to address the safety net that affects all of our consumers. I simply close by saying this. It should not, as I said at the beginning of this debate, it should not be this hard to pass a bill to make sure that the consumers in this country and around the world have enough to eat. It shouldn't be this hard. But everything seems to be hard these days. So let's do the hard things. Let's get our work done. Let's go to conference. Let's put a final bill together. Let's fulfill our responsibilities. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 351, the previous question is ordered. The question now is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. Pending the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to amend the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008 and for other purposes.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I am opposed in its current form.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion. The gentleman reserves a point of order. It's appropriate. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Gallego of Texas moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 3102, to the Committee on Agriculture with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. At the end of Title I of the bill, add the following. Section 142, protecting veterans, seniors, pregnant women, and children from hunger. A, in general, nothing in this Act or the amendments made by this Act shall result in a delay in issuing or providing benefits otherwise provided or available to a veteran, elderly or disabled member, pregnant woman, or minor child in the case.
Dispense with the reading.
Is there objection? Without objection, the reading will be suspended. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes on his motion to recommit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we all know the rule that this motion doesn't kill the bill or send it back to committee. It just adds an amendment before proceeding to final passage. There's a lot of confusion even here as the debate goes back and forth about whether or not veterans or kids are or are not included. There's a lot of apprehension around and across the country about the sequester and the budget and the government shutdown and how that impacts many, many different services. Because SNAP is a hybrid program, part automatic and part not, the benefits that it provides are in jeopardy. So regardless of whether or not SNAP and the cuts here today affect kids or veterans, this is a safety net. This motion to recommit simply says that there will be no delay in benefits for kids, for the elderly, for the disabled, for pregnant women, in case of a government shutdown or a default. Much has been made of this huge philosophical divide in this chamber, but the truth is that there is a lot of consensus, too, a lot of commonality. All of us want efficient government. We all love our kids. We are all taught to respect our elders, and we are all grateful for the services of our veterans. And yet, in typical congressional fashion, this bill decimates an efficient program that's not even broken. It has only a 3% error rate, a very low error rate. 97% of SNAP beneficiaries get SNAP because they need it. 91% of SNAP benefits go to households below the poverty level. That's $11,000 for an individual or $19,000 for a family of 3 people. I want to particularly focus that 82% of the households receiving SNAP have kids or elderly. 210,000 kids will lose their school lunch. And for many, it's the only good and reliable meal that they have. As a parent of a young son, I bet I know some of those kids. And you know what? I bet you know some of those kids too. The nonprofit group Feed Our Vets says that there...
The gentleman will suspend. The House will come to order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will suspend. The House will come to order. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
The nonprofit group Feed Our Vets says that there are many vets who already don't have enough to eat, and yet 170,000 veterans have their SNAP benefits impacted under this legislation. We can have that fundamental philosophical divide about the budget or about the debt or about many things, but we should all agree that we should take care of our kids. And we can all agree that we owe an obligation to our veterans. Already in November, without any action by this Congress, SNAP will automatically lose its ARA funding. The average beneficiary gets $133 a month. That's about $1.40, a little under per meal. Try eating for $1.40 a meal or $133 per month. San Antonio's food bank already serves 58,000 people per week. Imagine how many they'll serve if this bill goes into effect. And speaking of San Antonio, there's a young lady there, a working mother of 3 kids. Her name is Delaney. She works full-time at a doctor's office. That's 40 hours a week. She raises 3 young boys, one the age of my own son. Delaney said to me, "I'm trying my best. I'm working hard." She'd like to get a second job, but there'd be nobody at home to take care of the kids. SNAP isn't a luxury for her by any means. It's a necessity. The family relies on that, especially towards the end of the month when their budget is tight, to help them put food on the table. If we can make the program more efficient, let's look at that. But this bill cuts $40 billion without public testimony, without public hearings, without investigation, without input. Somebody just decided that $40 billion needed to be cut. It is not a well-reasoned or a reasonable approach. Our veterans deserve more than that. Our kids deserve better than that. Regardless of what happens on the debt ceiling or the government shutdown, let's not make our kids and our veterans casualties of a prolonged conversation. Let's be sure that there is no delay in SNAP benefits for kids, for veterans, for the elderly, for the disabled, or for pregnant women. in the event of a government shutdown or default. I'd ask all of you, because this is simply a safety net, to please vote yes on this motion, because all it says is in the event of a government shutdown, these people, the veterans, the kids, the elderly, and the disabled will be protected. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Before I recognize the gentlelady from North Carolina, does the gentleman from Oklahoma wish to withdraw his reservation on the point of order?
I wish to withdraw my point of order, Mr.
So
Speaker.
ordered. For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this motion to recommit.
The gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, my friends on the other side can say the same thing over and over again, but it does not make it true. This motion does nothing. Food stamps are not affected by a government shutdown. No one, not a struggling mother, not a child, a veteran, or any person in need will be denied benefits if they meet the program's current law and eligibility requirements. All this bill does is ask them, just as we did in a bipartisan way in 1996, to prepare for work or participate in their communities in exchange for services. But those much-lauded welfare reforms of 1996 have been thrown aside without the input of this Congress for years and has undermined the well-being of families participating in these programs. Work has been proven to be a beneficial part of the physical and mental health of every individual. It raises their family's income and improves the outcomes of their children. Why do the opponents of this bill want to undermine this successful strategy for reducing hunger in America by increasing workforce participation and increasing incomes of American families? I urge my colleagues to oppose this harmful motion and support the underlying bill. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
The lady yields back her time without objection. For what purpose the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Speaker,
without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. The opinion chair of the noes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those in favor of request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote will be on the motion to recommit. I'm having trouble. Will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of H.R. 3120 if ordered, and approval of the journal if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House has been debating the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly called Food Stamp Program. This is a bill that would cut nearly $40 billion from the program. The Congressional Budget Office estimating that 3.8 million would lose their benefits in 2014 if the bill is passed. If you're watching the votes this afternoon, the Associated Press says that with some Republicans wavering, the vote could be close. GOP leaders have been reaching out to moderates to ensure their support, while anti-hunger groups have similarly worked to garner opposition to the cuts. We're opening up our phone lines to get your thoughts on the food stamp program and the proposed legislation. Here's how to join the conversation. If you're a Democrat, the number is 202-585-3885. For Republicans, 202-585-3886. Independents and all others, 202-585-3887. We're also on Twitter, following the hashtag C-SPAN chat. We'll read some of those as well along the way. This is a 15-minute vote. This is the motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill before they move on to final passage. Let's go first to Clarksville, Tennessee. Jeffrey, good afternoon, Democrats line.
Good afternoon. My name's Jeffrey from Clarksville, Tennessee. I'll just go ahead with my statement.
Yes, sir, you're on there. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely oppose this bill. I'm both a veteran and a single father, and either way, regardless of whether it affects me or not, the mass majority of the people that will affect, how can we possibly take food out of someone's mouth when our nation is a rich nation. And not only is it a rich nation, we might have some problems with money right now in our economy, but the basis of life, we need food. People need food. And what we should do is find the people that are cheating the system and punish them, not just make a broad-based bill and take food out of lots of people's mouths. I oppose this bill and hope it doesn't pass out.
Let's go next to Corinth, Mississippi. Teresa's on the other's line. Hi there.
Hi, this is Teresa from Mississippi. I think that the future kids and future children deserve to have food on the table, and I also think they shouldn't go hungry, and I think that the world should not have a government shutdown because it would make the world in a real bad place. I also have ideas of helping the people with hunger. If somebody would take the time and hear me out and hear my ideas stopping hunger, I'll be glad to talk to them.
Teresa, thanks for your comments to Pinson, Alabama. Lasonia is on our Republican line. What do you think about the bill the House is voting on? Lasonia, you're on the go ahead, you're on the air.
Yes. My name, I'm Lasonia's sister. I'm also I'm a disabled veteran, and I know that I don't receive food stamps. But I was wondering, I understand we're having a problem with our economy right now, and I think that the Congress has a lot of information. Instead of going after the food stamps, why not go to first step first? We're providing meaningful jobs so that the people would not have to have food stamps if they get jobs. And I would think that the way they would get jobs if the House was to focus on the infrastructure of our nation, because if the systems within our nation are not working, then it creates a problem, and now it creates a frustration in the House, whereas you're trying to find a way to save money, but to deny people who the Congress, who these people grew up in America, they were educated by America, and if America happened to drop the ball on their education, on their culture, then I don't think the people should have to pay for it without the Congress first amending or the House amending their errors.
All right. Thank you, Lasonia. We are also taking your comments on Twitter. Where's Yadala says, I'm tired of buying my food and food for all the fraudsters. Food stamp funding should be cut by 75%. Abigail says SNAP benefits already aren't substantial enough to support Americans today. Why would you cut benefits even more? The Census Bureau reported that in 2008, 8.6% of households were getting benefits from the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Program. In 2012, 13.6% of U.S. households. Back to calls on our Democrats line. In Barnegat, New Jersey, David, hello there.
Hi, this is David Coppleton from Barnegat, New Jersey. Thank you for taking my call. I'd just like to say I cannot believe this is even up for a vote. To stop any kind of food stamps in this day and age with everything going on is just insane. The Republicans have gone above and beyond anything that I possibly thought they could do in trying to actually stop food into the mouths of starving children. You have no idea how many people I know who literally need this food to survive. By the end of the month, even what they're getting is not covering their costs. I had to be on this SNAP program while I was waiting for my disability claim to go through. Thankfully, I did get my claim, and now I don't need the program. But so many people are only on this program for less than a year, just like they said earlier. I don't understand what these Republicans want from us.
Let's go to our Republican line. Dot in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call. I worked at the Department of Human Resources in my county 13 years. I did eligibility for AFDC, AFDC Medicaid, and food stamps depending on the household composition and income. I am very discouraged by our country providing food stamps for people who buy cigarettes, and alcohol with their cash. They buy gasoline and run the roads in as many as 1 or 2 cars per household, and yet they have to have food stamps to eat. Why can they not use some of their alcohol, cigarette, and gas money to help pay for their own food? They're just dependent slugs. The Bible says, the sluggard shall not eat. Now, if people are really needy and they meet the qualifications, which have really and truly been relaxed, and it's just very discouraging. I am a Republican, and I support the Republicans, and I would support going back to Bill Clinton's program.
Here's where we are in the process of the votes. This is the motion to recommit vote, a procedural vote ahead of final passage of the bill that Congressional Quarterly says would cut the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps, by about 5%. They say Democrats are largely powerless to soften the cuts because there are no spending offsets in the bill they could tap to restore the money. The White House has threatened to veto. We're taking your calls, your comments on Twitter. Jared on Twitter tweets, most Americans on SNAP have jobs and can still put food on the table, but Lizzie tweets that SNAP is not meant as a sole source of food. It is a supplement. To our Democrats line, and Wilhelmina in Irving, Massachusetts. I hope I got that right.
That's right, you do.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to comment on Eric Cantor was speaking earlier, and I really got the idea that he was not having any idea that the majority of the people that are receiving SNAP benefits are people that are working. They're the working poor. So that, you know, I just don't see what this debate is about, because it's wasting time. There's plenty of other places that they could be raising funds, such as a Robin Hood tax, taxing Wall Street, and we would have plenty of funds to go around, because, you know, we pay tax on everything that we buy except for the Wall Street transactions. You know, I just think it's outrageous that that these people are being spoken to as if they are leeches on society. In reality, I live in the rural area, and if you required someone to be out there volunteering, there are many people that have absolutely no way to get where they need to go. I'm very fortunate to have a job, but I've also been very fortunate to work with Head Start program for many years and saw poverty in action.
Regarding the majority leader, the Associated Press says House conservatives, led by Eric Cantor, have said the program, that it would be SNAP, has become bloated. More than 47 million Americans are now on food stamps, and the program's cost more than doubled in the last 5 years as the economy struggled through the Great Recession. Here's River Falls, Wisconsin. Sue is on our others line.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I am disabled, but I do not receive food stamps. I do have a lot of friends that do, and every single one of them are working. So I think what the Republicans are pushing is nothing but lies, and I think all they do two things. Either they don't do anything at all, or they bully the poor. So my suggestion to them is to put on your big boy pants and let's go after corporate welfare and fraud, where the big bucks are.
Let's go to Larry, who's on our Republican line. He's in Smithville, Missouri. Larry, hello.
Hi, I'm a Navy combat veteran, and I'd like to say that everybody wants to beat up the Republicans, but when Obama put the word entitlement onto these programs, then everybody thinks they're entitled to them, because entitlement means you're entitled to it. But I don't believe if you produce babies left and right, you should be paid for those kids. I work hard, my wife works hard. I'm on disability too, from the Social Security disability, but I've worked over 30 years of my life. I've seen people who are on welfare, they're in their teens, because they think producing a baby, everybody's going to pay for that. I'm tired of paying higher taxes to pay for somebody else's mistakes or their free will. Why should I pay for something that I don't receive? I can't receive food stamps because my wife makes too much money each month. I make too much money on my disability too. But I still go out there. I've got a part-time job, which is allowed by law, but we're still not able to keep up on our bills. And I've got people that I know that rip it off. They've got someone who lives with them that has a full-time job, a union job, and they make good money.
All right, Larry, more of your calls coming up. This is a 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit, final passage on the SNAP bill, which would cut $40 billion from the food stamp program. Coming up next, a tweet from Mitch who says SNAP is 1.9% of the federal budget. 213 of 254 counties that doubled food stamp use voted MIT in 2012. Cuts are politically motivated. We spoke to a Capitol Hill reporter for a broader look at this food stamp bill. Reporter for Bloomberg News. What's going to be in this bill?
Well, it's going to be most of what was in the nutrition title from the last time that Republicans brought up a combined food and farm bill. That is to say, they went last time with $20.5 billion in cuts to nutrition spending, but this time it's about double that. The Congressional Budget Office says that we're in store for about $39 billion in cuts over compared to CBO's 10-year baseline. What that means that state work requirements that can be waived can't be waived as much. It means that we're looking at some restrictions on eligibility programs, because it's not like with this bill you just say, I want to cut this amount of money. What it is instead is you say, well, we want to change these eligibility requirements, and that leads to a certain amount of cuts. This is a contrast. This is about almost 10 times as much of a cut as the Senate has in their nutrition portion of their farm bill. So this is quite a gulf with what we've seen come earlier.
Well, you mentioned this time versus last time. Take us back. Why was this nutrition part of it, which used to be called the food stamp portion, why was this separated out from the farm bill?
Well, let's go really, really far back. This originally came up in sort of the 60s, 70s, and a little bit before as a coalition deal to get farm spending through. You'd have urban votes for farm policy. You'd have food vote. You'd have rural votes for food stamp programs. And in 1973, you get a nutrition title added to the Farm Bill. 1977, you're seeing food stamps more in their current form as kind of more of a welfare style policy, free aid rather than increasing purchasing power. So really this is an alliance that has passed farm policy for quite a long time. Fast forward to this summer, and you had a bill come up with $20.5 billion over 10 years in food stamp cuts that fell on the House floor. It was a stunning rejection. Democrats who thought that it cut way too much, thought that Republican amendments at the last second were too much. They didn't want to go for them. They cleaved off en masse, and there wasn't sufficient Republican support, including from some people who said, look, this doesn't cut enough. So House Republican leaders went back to the drawing board. They looked through August and they said, look, here's the deal. We're going to try and pass something with Republican-only support. And the Republican-only support means that we're going to have to cut more than we were doing before. Now, there's a Republican argument that says, look, there's a lot of waste in the system. There are people who are getting these benefits that don't need them. The example you're going to hear a lot in this debate is of somebody in California. A surfer in California was in a memo that I saw that's being passed around who's using food stamps for lobster. You're going to see talks about lottery winners. That was included in the previous version. That's back again. Banning lottery winners like one in Michigan from having food stamps. You're going to see a lot of those sorts of concerns battling up again against Democrats who say, look, you're going to kick people off of food stamps who need it. They're going to say that the rise in food stamp spending is due to the recession. That, of course, there are more people on food stamps now than there were in 2008, they say, because the economy is worse. And it's a simple one-to-one. Congressional Budget Office forecasts a decline in food stamps, in food stamp recipients, regardless of what happens. The question here is, should we stay at that level, or should we go much, much more?
And looking ahead to the Senate, will the Senate take up this bill if it passes the House?
I talked to Debbie Stabenow today about that. I asked her point blank, would you take this if it were in conference? She said absolutely not. The Senate does not want to see this. Senate Democrats do not want to see this. They didn't like decoupling food stamps from the Farm Bill in the first place. They don't like that this is a 3-year authorization. This is written as a 3-year authorization. Farm Bill is written as 5. If that goes forward, that could lead to a permanent divorce of food stamps from the Farm Bill. That's a policy they do not want to see. And so there are many things in here that Senate Democrats find objectionable, and you will hear House Democrats advancing their arguments on the floor this week.
Congress reporter for Bloomberg News, Derek Wallbank, thanks for the update.
Thank you so much for having me.
And the House, in the midst of the Democratic motion to recommit vote, final passage on the food stamp bill is next. We continue with your comments and calls. Tweet from Jason, based on what I heard, I think the bill is good. Work requirement community service for able-bodied Americans with no dependents. Another view from Florida Vintage, who says cutting SNAP is GOP punishment for those in the state of poverty. To our others line, here's Amesbury, Massachusetts. Anthony, welcome on our others line.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. My name is Anthony from Amesbury, Massachusetts, and I'd just like to say that I'm against the bill. I think that we should not allow any politicians to take food out of Americans' mouths. And I do have one other thing to say about Americans. I think that there's a lot of illegal aliens in this country that are probably getting a lot of benefits that should be rightly going to Americans, and I think that that's the main problem with the country. I think we have too many people and not enough to go around. And sooner or later, it's going to end up maybe killing this country. And that's about all I had to say about it.
Here's Joshua. He's in Monmouth, Illinois, on a Democrat's line.
Yeah, this is Josh Cross, and I think that this bill is more austerity from the Republicans, and that we're going to end up more like Europe the more we try to enforce these kind of policies. After we bailed out the banks, the people are left without a bailout. We got one job for every 3 person applying. These food stamps program keep stores afloat and keep corporations able to produce goods. The money goes directly into these stores and the food companies. Americans already throw away 40% of their food, and entitlement means you are paid. You pay for these with your tax dollars when you do work so that you can get these benefits when you are able to need them. People employ people to, if you employ people to enforce the fraud, it'll cost too much, and you won't even save any money in the food stamp program, which has been proven in Florida.
All right, Joshua, here's let's go to Gary on our Republican line in Alderson, West Virginia, as the motion to recommit vote winds down. Hi, Gary.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, you know, it's funny because we live, quote unquote, in an entitlement situation right now. People think they are entitled to. The only thing they're entitled to is to get off their butt, go out and get a job, find a way to get off these programs. These programs were not meant as a lifestyle. And unfortunately, many, many people, they get paid a hell of a lot more to sit on their couch than go out and find a job. You know, it's crazy.
All right, Gary, here's Sandra in Richmond, Virginia. She's on our others line.
Yes, sir. This is Sandra Gould. So I'm a little scared because, you know, I don't.
That's okay. Good. Just take your time and go ahead with your comment. It's fine.
I don't think he understands that people need food stamps. My husband, he's looking for a job right now. He lost his job in 2008, and we have 2 kids. I have a little girl, and I have a little boy, and he's 4 years old. And that man, I don't know his name, but he don't understand that these people need food stamps. We have to have food stamps. My husband don't work, so we have to rely on food stamps because all we relied on is the food bank, and the food bank don't give enough food to last for a week.
Sandra,
so we need food stamps.
How much is your monthly benefit?
My food stamps is $449. for 1 week, and then that's it. And then we have to go to the food bank. It don't last a long time unless I put a whole lot of foods in here, and that'll last for a while. And then the next week, we have to rely on the first week of October. So the man on the phone don't understand that some people need the food stamps because some people's not working, like my husband. And me and my husband is not in the system. We are not in the system.
Sandra, thanks for sharing your story. We're watching the vote winding down again. This is the Democratic motion to recommit vote, a last chance to change the bill before final passage. It looks like it's going down to defeat, and they will go to the final passage next. Let's go to our Republicans line. Jim in Tennessee, Whitesburg, Tennessee.
Yes, this is Jim Smith. I think that they should repeal the food stamps because just where we live right here, I know of one family that's got a farm that each family member makes $500 a week, but their children live on the farm, and they make $500 and some a month in food stamps, and it's wrong. And there's another one that goes to a church where I go that her and her husband live with her mom and dad, and they make about $500 a month in food stamps.
Well, Peter Kasparowicz of The Hill writes about the bill that it would eliminate the option states have of seeking a waiver from rules that require able-bodied adults to work or participate in a job program in order to receive the extended SNAP benefits. Republicans said ending the waiver would help focus federal benefits on the most needy. Couple more calls here. Santa Barbara, California, next up. Andre, hello.
Yes, hi, Andre. From Santa Barbara, California. I just wanted to let you know that, California right now, we're in a recession. We're in a really bad recession. It's not like we're back in the backwoods of Missouri or Louisiana where I own my own property and I don't have to do nothing but sit around all day and kick my feet up, okay? I've worked in construction. I worked offshore on oil rigs. I have my own business here in Santa Barbara for years.
That's the end of the vote. Thank you, Andre.
230, and the motion is not agreed to. The question is on passage of the bill. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The gentlelady from Ohio.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The nays and nays are requested. Those in favor request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members record their vote by an electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And this is the final passage vote on the bill that would cut nearly $40 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or food stamp program, over 10 years. This is a 5-minute vote on final passage. And writing about the votes needed to pass this afternoon, the Associated Press said finding a compromise and the votes to scale back the feeding program has been difficult. Conservatives have insisted on larger cuts. Democrats have opposed any cuts. And moderate Republicans from areas with high food stamp usage have been wary of efforts to slim the program. They quote Michael Grimm from Staten Island, New York, is saying, quote, the cuts are too draconian. And the Associated Press says Don Young, Republican of Alaska, also plans to join to cast a no vote this afternoon. Final passage on the SNAP program.
10. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is a question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. As many as are in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the journal stands approved.